Hi guys, I'm here with Jennifer K. Hill. We're here with an evolutionary leader, entrepreneur, author, and podcaster. She hosted popular shows. Hopefully, I'm not butchering his name. Deepak Chopra?
Exactly. You nailed it.
Goodness, good. Don Hoffman and many other leaders worldwide on her Regarding Consciousness podcast. I can't wait to check it out. So, regarding consciousness, after exiting, I'm reading this bio and then we'll get into it.
Oh, good.
After exiting her first company in 2018, she co-founded a new company in the technology space, Optimatch, om.app. So we'll get into that soon. She was recently, you received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Visioneers. Congratulations. Wow, that's a huge, wow. Yeah, that's a huge achievement. So when she's not speaking or building companies, she gives back. You built 2 schools in third world countries. I can't wait to get into that as well. So tell me a little bit anything that you'd like to share about you. How did you get where you are? Yeah, anything you'd like to share.
Well, thank you so much for having me here with your listeners, and thank you to everybody listening or watching us. I should probably give a disclaimer and a warning for this episode. Hi, I'm Jennifer K. Hill. I'm a recovering jerk. Nice to meet you. So
I love that. That's why we clicked.
people think they're like, oh, you're so amazing. You meditate and you build schools. Yeah, I'm making up for all the years I was a jerk. When I was building my first company, I didn't know how to manage 2 sticks, and I certainly didn't love myself. That's been honestly, Catalina, the secret that I found after doing a lot of self-development work for the last 20 years, studying human behavior, including my own. I realized that our ability to love others is equal to our ability to love ourselves. So if we don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves, if we don't know how to have intimacy with ourselves, then we won't know how to have intimacy in friendships, in romantic partnerships, in business partnerships, and there'll always be an emotional distance. And so if I look at my young adult life, I really loathed myself. I was suicidal. I was depressed. I tried to take my own life 3 times between 18 to 21. And by the time I hit the business world, I just tried to emulate what you see on TV, right? I only found out a few years ago I'm autistic. So I didn't know how to act. I could only really mimic what I saw on TV or other things until I did some deep diving and learned to love and accept myself. Then that gave me the capacity to develop connection with others. The more I allowed all of my weirdness and idiosyncrasies and things I judged myself for decades, the moment I accepted that and loved that in myself, I was able to love and accept every human that I met, even people who, maybe others would be like, how could you love that person? Everybody is a reflection of ourselves. I did a meditation about a month ago, and in the meditation, at the end of it, I was shown this beautiful magic mirror. And instead of seeing my own reflection, I was literally shown every single person I had ever met, and that they're just in some way, shape, or form a reflection of myself and helping each one of us to grow and learn.
Wow, I love this. How can somebody dive into that? You mentioned something about I needed to deep dive into myself and love myself. How does that look for someone that has no clue how to even begin?
I'm with you. I will be very straight with many of you. If you had asked me this like 5, 10, 20 years ago, I would not have had the answer. So good news, double thumbs up, everybody. I have been working on the answer for all these years. It involves 183 tools that I personally use, that I use with coaching clients that I work with. So step 1 to connecting with yourself is to do quiet work. My favorite way to do this, some people say they can't meditate. It's totally okay. You could do meditation, you could do breath work. Even if that seems like too much, I remember years ago, 20 years ago, when somebody first said, oh, just sit and meditate for 30 seconds. I said, you're crazy. I can't sit quietly for 5 seconds, let alone 30 seconds. So I have good news. There's hopes for all of you. If you feel like you can't get there, I now spend about 2 hours a day, every day in meditation and reflection. And what you do is the more you cultivate, Catalina, quiet. Our inner self, our higher self, is always talking to us 24/7. It's saying, don't go on that date. Don't take that job. go back to that friendly, nice guy you met at the supermarket who asked you out, but you passed off because he wasn't, edgy enough for you or whatever it is. Our inner wisdom and knowing is talking to us 24/7. However, we can't hear it. The reason most of us make the wrong business choices, the wrong romantic choices, the wrong friendship choices is that we're not tuned in. So even if you were to spend 1 minute in silence a couple of times a day, just turn your phone off, put it down, and just sit. You can breathe. There are many techniques I work with, including heart-focused breathing. You can just sit and breathe slowly and deeply into the count of 5 and out to the count of 5. I love doing it through your heart, which is HeartMath's technique. Just doing that for 1 minute a couple of times a day will completely re-regulate your nervous system. And then as you begin to cultivate that, it's in that stillness that you'll start to notice a very quiet voice. That quiet voice is telling you go right instead of left. Get on this plane, but not that plane. Begin to notice that you're guided. Now, if you want to go deeper, I can share with you one of my favorite techniques I do every day. Okay.
Yes.
About 8 or 9 years ago, two of my best girlfriends at the same time started studying something called inner child work. Have you heard of that before? So let's imagine if you're listening or watching this and you're in a place, you can follow along with me if you're seated and not driving. If you're driving, you can rewind and listen to this later. So if you're in a place where you're seated, I invite you to put your right hand on your heart and your left hand on your abdomen area. This is what I do every single morning as soon as I've finished meditating. And then you would either want to have a picture of yourself at a young age or shut your eyes. Again, if you're not driving, go ahead and shut your eyes. And I want you to imagine yourself as a little boy, a little girl, a little they or them, at whatever age comes to mind. You might see a version of yourself at 5 years old or 10 or 3 years old. Whatever age comes to you is absolutely perfect. And then you want to begin to cultivate a relationship with that version of yourself. And the first way to do this is to say just a quick hello. You might just want to imagine in your mind's eye, just saying a little wave or saying hello. I'm Jennifer, I'm Catalina. I'm an older version of you, and I just want to come and say hi and check and see how are you doing today. And then maybe even ask them, what do you want to be called? Do you want to be called sweetheart or buddy? Did you have a little nickname when you were a kid? My little inner child loves to be called sweetheart. If you call her sweetie, she will never respond to you and she will throw a fit. But if you call her sweetheart, I'm not kidding. She doesn't even she will throw a tantrum right here on the show if I call her sweetie. But if you call her sweetheart, she will respond in a civil manner. But so you find out how the little boy or girl or they or them wants to be addressed. And in my case, I call her sweetheart. So I'd say, hi, sweetheart, how are you? Oh, she's giving me a big hug. So you can even just imagine, you can just grab yourself and give yourself a great big hug if you want. She's just telling me that she loves me. She's very happy. We got to dance yesterday and today, and dancing is one of her favorite pastimes. And then you just begin to get to know in the same way that you would connect with a little boy or girl or they or them, you would just say, how are you doing today? What are you feeling? Oh, she's really happy right now. She likes you, Catalina. She's happy. And then you take your kid this. And then I have to tell you, Catalina, I used to be so ashamed and embarrassed to dance because when I was younger, I was on a cheerleading squad. And I will always remember our cheerleading coach saying, we're only as good as our weakest link, which is clearly Jennifer. So just keep that in mind. And so you get told certain things, and it's totally okay. Everybody is doing the best they can, as hard as that might be to hear. Your parents, your coaches, your teachers, everybody's doing the best they can with what they had. That's why it's our responsibility to then love and nurture that part of ourselves. And what's amazing is this is the secret to happiness. You want to learn how to be a happy, fulfilled human being with a great marriage, friendship, partnership, whatever it is, love yourself. That's it. Boom. Everything is handled. And so I say all of that to say that I used to be embarrassed to dance because I was being autistic, I was kind of really awkward and didn't know how to move. And about 8, 9 years ago, when I started doing this work, I asked my inner child, I said, what would you like to do today, sweetheart? What would make you happy? And she said, dancing. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what do you want to dance to? And so now, Catalina, every day without fail, I dance every single day. Some days I dance for 5 minutes. Some days I dance for an hour. And it just brings me so much joy. I dance at the supermarket. I was picking up a prescription at the pharmacy the other day, and I had one of my favorite songs came on by Pharrell Williams, and I'm just like jamming in the pharmacy, and everybody in the pharmacy is just like laughing and smiling. I was like, I like to dance. They're like, yeah, we can see that.
I love it. And you have a contagious smile. I could only imagine everybody was just like, I need to go back to that place and see her. Yeah.
Else joy, because that's the fun thing. And here's another little tidbit that when I'm doing coaching, consulting, and training for companies around the world, one of the biggest things, Catalina, that I teach people is, you know how somebody gets upset, like it might be your spouse or your boss or your colleague, and they are just like being a jerk in that moment. If you can, instead of seeing them as a 30, 40, 25, 50-year-old adult, however old they might be, if instead in that moment you can see them as an upset 3-year-old or 4-year-old, your response to them completely shifts. Because when we're in arguments with one another, we are not fighting with one another as 43 or 53-year-old selves. We are fighting with one another as little 5-year-olds. And that's why the world is in disarray right now. And the moment we can see that, though, then we gain access. You're not going to scream and yell at a 5-year-old. You're going to go, and then you can just respond in a different way rather than allowing yourself to get triggered. You could say, this is the wounded 5-year-old of this man or woman. I wrote an article about this on LinkedIn called The Inner Child in the Boardroom, where so often it's our inner children showing up. And the more we heal the inner child, the more healed human shows up to meetings and to our lives and our relationships.
My goodness, this is so amazing. I had this thought the other day as I was getting annoyed with someone, and I was looking at them, how childish. How did you live your life? You're 70 years old and you're so immature. And I'm just judgmental in my head. And then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? That's actually my opportunity to show wisdom and help them and help their inner child. Obviously, they have some work to do, but we all have that child in us, and it just unfortunate that it just comes out at the wrong time sometimes.
Well,
But then, you know.
that's the secret, Catalina. So I will tell you a secret. I have been doing inner child work now for about 8 or 9 years since I learned it all those years ago from both of my best friends. And if I do not, sometimes I'm traveling and I rush and I forget because I have like this really lengthy process I take myself through. So once in a blue moon, like 2 to 3 times a year, every now and again, I'll forget to check in with my inner child. At 2 o'clock, I am crying. I am like upset like a 2-year-old. And most of the time I'll be like, oh crap, I forgot to check in. I'm like, sweetheart, is that you? I'm never speaking to you again. And then that's how I'm relating with the world. It's like I'm showing up as an upset 3-year-old. There really is a there. If we can tend to that part of ourselves and just pay them enough attention, it doesn't have to be long, just a few minutes every day. Ask yourself, how are you feeling? What do you need? The other mind-blowing thing about this, Catalina, is most of us as adults, we don't know what we're feeling. We have no idea. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, sweetheart, how are you feeling? I'm sad. I'm like, crap, we're sad? What are we sad about? And then she'll be like, oh, this hurt my feelings. And I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. But then all of a sudden, if we don't tend to it, that might accidentally happen to somebody else where we might be upset with one person and then all of a sudden it comes out to our business partner or our best friend instead.
Yes. And you know, when we were doing the exercise with the hand on the heart and trying to go back, could I envision a version, or could I create an imaginary version of me? Because my childhood was so messed up, I really don't want to go there. Could I actually have myself in a different dimension where I was actually a happy child and I wasn't always living in fear? And
Yes, and I will say actually one of my best friends who taught this technique to me, she grew up in a very abusive household, like drugs and unhealthy stuff, etc., and a mom who wasn't there. And so when she started doing this work, her inner child wouldn't even come out behind a tree she was hiding behind. Like when she would try to visualize, this little girl would be so scared and hiding. And it took 30 days of her coaxing and just kind of waving and saying, hi there, are you okay? Want to talk? Let me know. And just sitting there and being with it. So, yes, you could technically spiritually bypass it and go straight to there. There's something to be said for having a beautiful place where you feel safe and maybe even imagining constructing that in your mind. So you're not seeing yourself in the really traumatic situation that you were in as a child. but in a beautiful, safe space. It might be by a beach or waterfalls or unicorns, whatever it is. So you can create that space, though you still want to give that inner version of yourself the opportunity to be reparented by a healthy adult in a healthy way, because that's what's going to have, whatever age you are right now, whatever version of us shows up in these meetings. That's what allows us to heal those traumatic wounds. I'm not a huge fan of like going back. There are wonderful modalities and technologies to go back to the moment you were being beaten or verbally abused. That's not what this is about for me. Many wonderful practitioners could take you down that route. That's not the way I do it. I just go back and I just spend quality time. And you might cry sometimes, and you might, you or they might feel angry or upset. Though the more you can create a safe space to hear and understand yourself, the more you're going to feel more psychologically safe and available for intimacy in the world.
Wow. And do you actually do also online courses like these or sessions, however you'd like them? What is the terminology?
Yeah, so I've been teaching online now for about 4 or 5 years. And actually, this year is going to be a very special year because I'm starting a new Super Connections group where for 365 days, every day, I'm going to give people 15 minutes a day of tools for 365 days. And so people can subscribe to it. It's the first time I'm ever doing this. It's starting on March 1st. And that will go for an entire year. And anybody who is a part of the subscription will be given 15 minutes of wisdom because, as I mentioned, I have 183 tools I use. So every day I'm going to take people through different tools, different techniques, and deep dive into this.
That's amazing. And where can they find this?
So if anybody wants to learn about it, go to my website, Jennifer, Jennifer, K as in kite, Hill, HILL.com. And a pop-up will show up that'll allow you to sign up for my newsletter. And so the people on my newsletter list will be the first ones who get access to it.
Nice. And this is also, so this would be to heal that child in you and also a leadership, right? It helps with what else? The entrepreneurship, all that stuff, or?
Yeah, it's the way I work with a variety of people. Most of the people I personally coach, I only coach about 5 to 6 people at any given time, one-on-one, because I tend to do a lot of groups and speaking and so forth. So I take people through a variety of things. It's how to live your best life, like how to win at the game of life. You know how, Catalina, when you play a video game, you need to know the rules of the game. Or if you play a board game like Monopoly, you need to know, oh, pass go to get $200. I've been compiling a list of 183 tools, from Kabbalistic wisdom that I've studied, to Buddhist wisdom, to different neuroscience, psychological techniques that I've studied. And then I've compiled these into 183 tools of how to win at the game of life. And that's why I'm a huge fan, and I love sharing this work with people, is because I truly wish from the bottom of my heart, Catalina, I could help every human being on the planet have a deep and meaningful relationship with themselves and others. As I like to say, I want to be the Oprah of human connection. I want to be like, you look under your chair and you get a deep and meaningful relationship with yourself and others, and you look under your chair and you get a deep and meaningful relationship. And I walk the walk. And I had a very beautiful gift given to me that reflected this back, because it's one thing to say it and it's another thing to embody it. And one of the most beautiful gifts that I've ever been given in my life was a week and a half ago. A friend of mine, Johan, in Australia, who is a brilliant super connector, puts on events with speakers around the world. Johan messages me last Saturday morning. He says, Jen, I have a surprise for you. I said, oh, okay. He said, hop on your WhatsApp. I'm like, okay. And I meet thousands of people every year, and I'm always giving people connections. So Johan put together a WhatsApp group for me of the 32 people I introduced him to over the course of a year. I didn't even remember introducing him 32 people. And so then everybody just starts sharing love for one another, from podcast hosts to everyone is sharing, people sharing tools and resources and just helping each other. And then today I had a true miracle. So I'm getting ready to launch the Super Connections Mastermind and the new daily downloads I'm going to be doing. And so I just shared in the group. And then all of a sudden, my friends, like Corey posts about it on LinkedIn. He has 500,000 followers. My friend Sam says, I have a confession. I'm part of the Jennifer Hill fan club. And it's just so nice to see that. And I don't mean this in a bragging way. I just mean it shows to me that I embody what I say. Like if I'm saying to someone, do this, it's not something I would ever ask somebody else to do that I don't do 100% of the time every day myself.
And you do them, but actually, after you, I have a back-to-back. My next podcast episode is with your friend, Priya.
Oh,
So you
amazing.
definitely, yes.
Yeah, everybody on this show, you will love Priya. Tune in. She is a magical unicorn who's doing beautiful work in the world.
Yes, so you do. Unlike Oprah, you are a genuine one.
I know. Some people don't love Oprah. I just use that analogy because, like, I respect what she created.
Yeah. And I'm gonna ask some questions from the group, from some of the followers. And one is, you've been described as an evolutionary leader. Could you share what this means to you? What's your approach to leadership? Any tips? And that's, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, so the Evolutionary Leaders is a group that Deepak Chopra and Barbara Marx Hubbard created with about 300 or 350 of us around the world, ranging from scientists to thought leaders. I remember I was so nervous. I was like this when I got invited to be a part of it. I was like, because, we all have this part of us that feels not good enough. And there are prolific thought leaders in there, Michael Beckwith, Bruce Lipton, Deepak, and many others. And so the term evolutionary leader, I'll tell you what it means to me aside from just the label of it from this group. To me, it means being able to understand that being a leader is not an individual thing. Being a leader is a community global event that as leaders, in the same way that we evolve as human beings, as we evolve as leaders, we're constantly at the edge of the wave of consciousness of what humanity needs. So there could be 183 tools that I know right now and that I personally use. And being a leader means I'm willing to let go of every one of those tools. If something new emerges, if there's new information, if I find contradictory information. And I think that's what being an evolutionary leader is. Traditional leaders, there are millions of business books, and it's like good to great says that you do this, or this business book says that you do that. But an evolutionary leader is constantly from a 360-degree view, assimilating everything, not only from what they're reading and what they're learning, but from real-time experiences, experiencing it. And I've had to go back. There have been times where I might have learned something. I'm like, oh, wow, well, I'm going to amend what I said because I actually learned that there was more to this than what I thought. And so it's constantly understanding that what you might share in this moment is relevant now, and that this could have to change 180 degrees in a week, in a month's time.
I love it. And what is your approach to leadership?
It's so funny, actually. I was just writing a talk I'm going to be giving in a month or so on how to be a leader who inspires others. And to me, a great leader is somebody who leads by example. I've seen it in companies from when I ran and built and sold the first company I was running, which was a recruiting company, to what I do now in consulting with corporations and working with our OptiMatch software. Great leaders are people who say, follow me, do as I do, not do as I say, do as I do. And so one of the biggest things I've noticed in leadership is uplift people. Just the other day, I was told such a wonderful piece of wisdom from another leader friend I respect and admire. They said, every time you give a piece of critical feedback, meaning that something needs to be changed, you first need to give 7 pieces of positive feedback to every one piece of critical feedback. And you only give critical feedback, any sort of criticism, in private, and you acknowledge publicly. And one of my other favorite things I've learned as a leader, I used to host a popular podcast called Get Yourself a Job. And we had a brilliant guest on, Dr. Paul White, about 3 or 4 times on that show. And Dr. Paul White wrote a famous book called Appreciation at Work. And what he found was 89% of people leave a job due to lack of appreciation. So one of my favorite things that I teach leaders that I've learned from Dr. Paul White's work is to always ask, how do you want to be appreciated? So Catalina, do you prefer public appreciation? Do you want private words of encouragement? Do you want, more one-on-one time? Would you like, gift cards to your favorite restaurant or, Amazon? And so that actually piggybacks on another thing I learned from another brilliant leader, Alison Armstrong. I always want to give credit where credit's due to the teachers, because obviously I didn't come up with all these ideas. So I always want to be able to give everybody all the breadcrumbs. So if they want to go back and study with any of these people, Alison Armstrong, I studied with her for about 7 years on and off. And she did a profound class on partnership. I think I just recommended it to a client today called Celebrating Partnership, if you look it up. And what she had said was, great leaders go through a process of clarification. So let's imagine that I hire you and you start working for me, yet I don't ask how you want to be appreciated. I don't ask what matters to you. I don't ask what your goals are. And I just assume and I talk at you, that's going to create friction and the person's going to leave the job or get fired or there's going to be a lack of harmony. Though, if instead I go through what Allison calls a process of clarification, that's what makes all the difference. So I'm going to pull these two pieces together from Dr. Paul White and Allison Armstrong. When I was running my last company that we exited, I had a gentleman who we had hired in the Bay Area, lovely guy. And I said to him on day one of working together, we'll call him Bob for the purpose of this. I said, Bob, how do you want to be appreciated? Now, this is going through the process of clarification and also tying in Dr. Paul White's work. And Bob said to me, Jennifer, please don't ever acknowledge me publicly. I would be mortified. I would be so humiliated if you ever sent out a group email or acknowledged me on a call. That would make me feel ashamed. However, if you were to privately send me a note or privately thank me on a call, that would mean the world to me. Think of how many of us would never take that little itty bitty step, and we might think we're doing the best thing ever. I'm going to sing from the rooftops that this guy is the best. Yet that one little step, that process of clarification, is what makes all the difference.
How do I put all this in one reel? Because everybody needs to watch this. Such amazing advice. Wow. Another question I have, and this one is from Jake. After exiting your first company in 2018, what motivated you to leap into the technology space with OptiMatch? And how does this venture align with your overall vision?
Great question, Jake. Thank you so much for asking it. It's a very funny story, so I'm glad you asked it because I don't get to share it very often. So a little secret about me. After I sold, the first company was recruiting, completely different industry, but similar in some ways, which I'll get into in a moment. I sell that company in late 2019. Our vice president and executive vice president took over the company for me, and I had a year where all I had to do was consult for 10 hours a week. That was it, anywhere in the world. Best year ever. That happened for me end of 2019 going into COVID. I was the luckiest human being in the world. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to travel the world again. And in my own mind at that moment, Jake, I was like, never will I ever build another company again. Because it's like, whew, it was a lot. It was like 7 years of building, and then you get acquired, and then you assimilate the team, and it was a lot. So I swore I would never build another company. And then late in 2020, I'd met this woman in an online kind of group thing, and she and I were doing a follow-up call after the meeting. And she said, "Oh, I'm looking for an advisor around matching people, and given your background in human behavior, I think you'd be great." I'm like, okay, that's safe. I'll be an advisor. That's not building another company. I'll be an advisor. Well, after about a month or two of advising her, she's like, really what I need is a co-founder. I really need somebody with your exact skill set to be a co-founder. And I'm like, oh, so it was all because of her. And then my old business coach who helped me sell the first company came to me. He's like, Jen, and I insisted that he be a part of this new company. I said, listen, I will only work on building a new company if Julian can be a part of it, because he was instrumental in selling the last one. So Julian comes on board. He says, Jen, why don't we just create an algorithm that mirrors your intuition for matching people? And I was like, I do not come from technology and software. Is that even possible? And that's what we did. So we've been developing this for 4 years. So anybody can go. It's om.app/survey. Anybody can take it. And just for fun, it doesn't tell you the matching part. That's the paid part that our businesses and clients pay us for. But if you just want to see, how are you motivated? Are you motivated by fun? Are you motivated by achievement? Are you motivated by information or by other people's needs? That's what I found is the secret sauce to psychological safety in human beings. In fact, Google did a study on this in 2012 called Project Aristotle, where they sought out to study across 37,000 people, 180 plus teams, what is the number one factor in team success. And do you want to know what it was, Catalina? Safety, psychological safety. And so that's what I've studied my whole life, is what has us feel psychologically safe. And what we found is if my motivators and your motivators are within a few points of each other, we're going to have natural affinity. Now, there's going to be outliers. And of course, you can be friends with people sometimes who might be separately motivated. But have you ever noticed how sometimes, Catalina, you meet somebody and right away you feel like, oh, my energy feels more expansive after I get off a call with them or go to dinner or breakfast or whatever, go in a meeting, where other times your energy just feels drained and you feel zapped and it takes a long time to recover. Well, what we've started to study and find out is if my motivators and your motivators overlap, we're going to amplify each other's energy. And if my motivators and your motivators are opposite, sometimes you can create friction. Opposites attract. We did not design this for dating. However, it does seem to work for that. And so that's the one place where we've seen interesting data is in 30% of happy couples, they choose somebody exactly opposite, which still need more science on that. But most of the time when our motivators overlay with each other, we become more expansive. And when we're opposite to each other, it takes more energy to meet each other in the middle.
That is very interesting. And I found it very accurate. I was looking at the results and I'm like, whoa, that is.
You did it right after.
And yes, even though I thought me and my husband would be at different poles because, he's very financial minded and very creative. But then I was looking at the results. I'm like, well, actually, this kind of makes sense, So yeah, it's very interesting. What would be, you've expressed interest in cracking the code of human connection. Could you elaborate on what this means and why it is important in today's society?
So why crack the code of human connection? When we had this time during COVID, where all of a sudden we were separated from one another, and many of us had hours and hours a day with people who we might not normally spend that much time with, or some of us spend hours and hours a day all by ourselves alone. It really illuminated something that I think had been masked in society over the last several hundred years. And that's now emerged into kind of two different camps of people. On the one camp of people, you have people who did deep introspective work during those quiet times. And then they're like, okay, well, I have this old wound and I'm afraid. I had one around touch. I didn't touch anybody for 2 months in a period. I remember I went up to this guy riding a horse. I was living in London and I hadn't touched a single person or animal for 2 months. And I was like, sir, I haven't touched anything or anyone for 2 months. May I pet your horse? And the man gives me side eye. He's like, yes. And I was like, ah, horse energy. Like, I'm being totally transparent with you guys. Like, so there were so many different ways that this showed up. And yet other people realized that they didn't like the people they were with, or maybe they realized they didn't like themselves. So what I've noticed, Catalina, is that now more than ever, it is necessary. It's not like a nice to have. It is necessary to understand how to connect with ourselves and others because so many of us are working remotely. And so what cracking the code of human connection for me means is what I call the golden triangle of connection. The more deeply we connect to ourselves, the more that allows for connection to others over here, which then allows for connection to our purpose at the top of the triangle. However, if we don't have that connection to ourselves, the rest of it falls over. You see so many people who might make millions or billions of dollars selling a company, and yet they feel completely unfulfilled. Well, it's because they're missing that piece. Or you see a lot of people who might have lots and lots and lots of people in their lives, and they might even have lots of followers, but yet they still feel empty inside. It's because they're missing that piece. So in any which way you look at it, in this golden triangle of connection, as I call it, that's what has people disconnect. That's why we have this loneliness epidemic. 25% of young people or more are feeling more disconnected than ever before. We have social media, we have all of our smartphones and devices. And I think that going within doesn't mean I'm not here to harp on devices. I love it. We're, doing this podcast right now via technology, which I'm deeply grateful for. And yet every Saturday, for anywhere from an hour to a few hours, I turn off my phone. And I spend time, part or all of the day, in silence. It was actually Deepak Chopra who inspired me to do that when we first met in 2020. He said, Jennifer, I spend 2 weeks. I have not gotten there. Let me be very clear. He said, I spend 2 weeks every year with my phone off in complete silence. So the most I've managed is 48 hours. So I will work my way up there. I will tell all of you, if you can even turn your phone off for an hour and see if you can just sit and read a book and not respond to anybody, miracles happen. It's like crazy, amazing miracles begin to happen.
Wow. You know what? Challenge accepted.
Yay!
Do this Saturday. I'm gonna turn my phone off for 3 hours.
Yay, you will love it. Carlina, you'll have to text me later and let me know when you're able to make that happen. I've taught so many coaching clients this. For me, every time, there's never been a time where I've turned off my phone and something wonderful and magnificent doesn't happen in a surprising way, because there's an ancient Kabbalistic principle about this, where if you restrict receiving something, say you really want that ice cream, but you restrict receiving it, then something even better comes along to fill that space.
Or when you finally have it, you embrace the hell out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. It's like, ah.
And that's the secret to life, is like, I'm the queen of devouring life. Like I just want to like, just like eat life up. And so that's why I practice restriction. I'm like, okay, don't devour life, just be with life.
That's beautiful. Very nicely said. Well, I have another question from Adriana. Resilience is a key theme in your work. Can you share some tools or techniques you found effective in building resilience, especially among entrepreneurs and leaders?
Great question, Adriana. Thank you so much. If you'd like, Catalina, I'd love to take it back to something I touched on earlier, but didn't take the listeners and viewers through. May I take you through an exercise?
Yes, let's do it. Thank you. Yeah, I love it.
So this is my number one favorite technique for resilience. I do it unequivocally every single day myself. Any executive I teach, anytime I'm teaching a program, I always include this in the work. So it's called heart math, like the mathematical heart math. And they've been studying this for 40 plus years. Dr. Roland McCready and his team at Heart Math have been studying heart-brain coherence. So first I'll give you context, Adriana, of why this matters and how it works, and then we'll go into the technique. So many of us have heard of this amygdala. Have you ever heard of that, Catalina? It's like that fight or flight part of the brain, the reptilian part. So that's the lower part of the brain right here. Then we have the mid part of the brain, which is the mammalian brain, which is, am I safe? Are you like me? Can I trust you? And then we have the higher brain function, the prefrontal cortex, our executive functioning. That's where we have the capacity for love, for creativity, for imagination, for human connection. However, what most of us don't realize is that the higher brain can't function until the lower part of the brain first feels safe. So this is where we get into Dr. Roland McCready's work with heart math and resilience. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take you through heart-focused breathing, which they teach to first responders, firefighters, entrepreneurs, astronauts, everybody in between they teach it to. And what this does is we're going to quiet that lower part of our brain that doesn't feel safe and regain access to our prefrontal cortex. Does that interest you?
Yes, I love it.
Okay, great. So I love, for those of you who are driving, you can actually do this exercise with your eyes open or closed. This is why I love this. If I'm in the middle of a fight with somebody and say I've tried every technique and somehow or another I still get triggered, you're human, by the way. It's not about perfection. You're still going to get angry. You're still going to have moments of being triggerable. So when I get triggered, you can actually do this with your eyes open, or you can do it proactively before an important conversation or phone call. So you can do this with your eyes open or closed. I do recommend, if you are in a place where you can close them, it's helpful to learn the technique with your eyes closed and then eventually practice it with your eyes open. Whichever way you choose is great. So go ahead and uncross your arms and legs and place your feet firmly on the floor. And let's begin to focus our attention in the area of our heart or chest. Imagine that your breath is flowing in and out right through the center of your heart or chest, breathing a little slower and a little deeper than usual, finding an easy rhythm that's comfortable for you. As we continue slow, deep, heart-focused breaths in and out, imagine your heart itself is doing the breathing. Let's see on this time if we can breathe into the count of 5 right through the center of our heart or chest and breathe out to the count of 5. Doing this a couple more times, breathing slowly and deeply in and out right through the center of your heart or chest. And on this next time as we breathe in, I invite us all to breathe in calm. Imagine breathing the sensation and feeling of calm in right through the center of your heart And breathing out calm and radiating that calm to everything and everyone around you. Doing that a couple more times, really connecting to a time where you felt calm or thinking of a calming scene. Really feeling that sensation of calm and breathing that out right through the center of your heart or chest. A couple of more times. I'm going to allow you to do this on your own. Breathing as slowly and deeply, really feeling that sensation. Whenever you're ready, you can allow your breathing to begin to return to normal. Feeling your feet on the ground, wiggling your fingers and toes, and whenever you're ready, open your eyes if they were closed. What's that for you?
My goodness, I feel so relaxed. Wow.
That's your nervous system calmed. You now have access to all the yummy bits and pieces, creativity, imagination, joy, all of that's available now. It's good, right?
Wow, and your voice is so soothing and relaxing. My goodness. Yes, if you're ever in Vegas, please. I owe you dinner, the least I can do.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, I teach
Oh,
every executive how to do this, and it's the quickest way to prevent upsets. A little fun tip when I was trained in how to do this is every time you walk through a doorway, use that as a catalyst to remind yourself to breathe in and out for your heart. Because we all walk through so many doorways every single day, and then eventually it becomes a habit, and then you can pull that technique in whenever you need it.
wow. And you know, actually, the importance of breathing. I read this book. I'm going to share the link with you after. You probably already, Nestor, something Nestor is breathe.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yes, I haven't read that one, but I hear wonderful things about it.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. The importance of breathing and even just this exercise. I'm already like so relaxed. Thank you so much. I love it. Now I'm trying to think, where were we? Because this is amazing. I don't want this to end, you guys. Wow. I have one more question from another person, says anonymous. To keep her anonymous. Building two schools in third world countries is a remarkable achievement. What inspired you to take on these projects? And how has this experience influenced your perspective on success?
Thank you so much, Anonymous, for asking that. It's one of my favorite topics to discuss. When I was very young in my 20s, in 2010, there was a famous book that came out called Half the Sky by Nicholas Kristof and his wife, who are Pulitzer Prize winning journalists. And as I read that book, I cried myself to sleep every night. It still moves me just talking about it today, because the book was about how women hold up half the sky. And it talked about things like sex trafficking, women's emancipation, all these things from these journalists who traveled around the world to Africa and different parts. And they said unequivocally the number one way to prevent sex trafficking and to equalize women's rights around the world is to send boys and girls in equal amounts to school. And that for as little as $35,000, you could build a school and you could partner with the World Bank, and the World Bank would match that. So I was off to the races after that, Anonymous. I was like, yes, I'm going to go save the world. I'm going to go build my first school. But I went to Cambodia in about 2012, not long after that, to go look at giving. I gave a portion of the proceeds of my first company every year. I always do that to charity. And so I was like, great, I have this extra money. I can donate it to charity. And when I got to Cambodia, I didn't trust that the money was going to go to the kids. I was like, well, how do I ever protect the kids? How do I be sure they have the right teachers and the right books and to know that the money is going to go where it has to go? So I gave up for about 4 or 5 years. I completely gave up on it because it felt too big, too daunting. How many of us have had that vision where it's like, oh, I want to do this, but I don't know how, or it's too big. So fast forward, I'm in a personal development class with a bunch of leaders who met every 6 weeks in Monterey, California. And one day I'm in this class and we're instructed in a breakout session to ask each other, what matters to you? And this young man's sitting next to me and he looks me in the eye and he says, what matters to you? And I looked at him and I said, building schools without missing a beat. And he said, well, what are you doing about it? I said, I give up. It's too hard. And he said, great, I want you to share that. The moment we finish this exercise, raise your hand and share that. And I was like so nervous and like shy and like, what? So I raised my hand sheepishly and the instructor calls and says, yes. And I said, I'd love to build schools, but I don't know how. And this woman stands up, just not far in front of me, 20 feet in front of me. Her name was Linda Burgess. And she said, Jennifer, call Skylar at Build on Monday. You'll be on your way to building schools. And less than 5 months later, we were on our way to building our first school in Nepal. I've since partnered with Build On in building that first school in Nepal, the second one in Senegal, and I intend to build more with them.
In Senegal too. Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. And do you speak French?
Un petit peu.
Wow. You are so inspiring. I'm actually, I'll reach out to you because this is something I would love to do. And Cambodia is actually, I had goosebumps when you mentioned Cambodia because I went there and I saw a family that lived by a tree. That's all they had, that tree. And since then, it just is so stuck in and they said to build a home for them, they could even build something for like $3,000. I was like, really? That is so. I need to do that for at least for a family out there. I still have that in me. If a school would be like you said, but the fact that you got two done, there's hope. I thought it would be too ambitious for me to go as high as a school, but I am so happy to hear there's hope.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
It's life-changing. And what was the best part of building both the schools is I got to do it with my family. My mom and dad came with me on the first trip, and my dad came with me, and my dad and I built the school hand in hand on the second trip. And the most amazing thing in Senegal was the ladies there. It was predominantly Muslim, some Christian, a little bit mixed culture, but it's always so interesting to learn the different cultures and what's acceptable. And the women there were taught they weren't powerful. And so here they saw me, and then I was digging and shoveling and helping work with the rebar and building sand. And one woman comes up and she says, "You've already paid for the school. What are you doing? You're the white woman who already paid for this. Why are you building?" I said, "Because we can be just as powerful as the men." And one by one, Carolina, the
They
women
did.
lined up one by one and formed a work train, and they started putting sand on their head. And the head of the women, the leader of the women in the village said, "Thank you for teaching us that we can be just as powerful as the men and that we too can build."
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to cry.
Yes, I'm getting teary-eyed here. Wow, that's amazing. Your story is so powerful and there's so much to you, so much to learn from you, it's amazing. Wow, I guess before we get into the two quick games, what was the most surprising lesson you've learned on your journey as an entrepreneur, speaker, and leader?
That you can lead with kindness and still be as effective, if not more.
Even if you have a bad day, how do you hold on to kindness on a day where just nothing goes right?
I think it's on those days where we get to regulate our own nervous system. I do one of two things. If I am having a very tough day, the hardest thing for me, Catalina, is if I don't sleep well. I literally lose a lot of my capacity. If I don't sleep well one day, I can most of the time, do the best I can to put it together. But if I don't sleep well 2 days in a row, I had a week like that last year in July where I did not sleep well for 5 days in a row. And I just honor myself and I tell people, I'm like, listen, we could have the meetings today. I would recommend that we reschedule. I do not have the capacity to be my highest and best self. Are you amenable to rescheduling for a week where I can show up best? And that's one thing is sometimes as a leader, you have to say, I don't know if I can give it 100%. If I can give it 60, 70%, is that enough? And if it's enough, I'll show up. Just know you're getting 60 to 70% instead of 100.
Oh, I love that. It is so true. I learned that the hard way. I went in a meeting, was not my best self, and I regret it. I should have just been transparent and, hey, this is what I am right now. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. So now for the fun, quick questions. They're very random, just to have some fun. If your pet could talk for 60 seconds, what would they say?
Oh, you'd say, I love you, 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 I love you. You're the best mom in the whole world. I love you, I love you, I love you. That's what I wake up to. Every single morning I wake up and my dog jumps on my face with paws on either side of my head and just licks my entire
My
face
goodness.
up and down. It's just and I can feel his thoughts. He's like, I love you, 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 I love you.
I wish I had that experience. I have a cat, so it's not the same.
No, he loves me so much, and I love him so much. He's the sweetest, most love-filled dog. And so I literally have to be like, okay, I understand you love me, and then pull him up.
What kind of puppy do you have?
A miniature poodle. He is just full love fest. That's all he is love.
They're adorable. Those ones are adorable. Yeah, I would love to get a puppy. I just don't know if I could. If I could have like all the time, all I could dedicate, it wouldn't be fair since you really have to be there for them. And yeah, you get to master any skill instantly. What are you choosing?
Flying.
Mm.
I travel a lot. It would be fun. I would say flying or teleportation. That would be probably teleportation might be easier. Flying would be more fun. Teleportation would be more effective given how much I travel.
And all of the projects you have going on. Yeah. What's that one song you'd pick as your life's theme music?
Don't stop believing.
Believe it.
Feeling. I literally have gotten groups of hundreds of people to sing that in every country and city around the world. We were just doing it on Necker Island like last week. I get like groups sing alongs. It's my favorite song.
Oh, that's awesome. A lot of people can't answer that question. You answer so quickly and you sang it too. That's awesome. Wow. A lot of people don't know what their song might be. That's amazing. That's a good choice right there. You get to swap lives with any fictional character. Who are you picking?
Let's see. Fictional character. I would say Doctor Strange. My life goal is to be Doctor Strange by the time I die.
Wow. That's awesome. And that would be because?
Doctor Strange is superhuman quantum guy who can move energy fields, teleport, and do all the things. So why not?
Brilliant. What's that one random talent you have that's completely useless but kind of cool?
Talking to plants?
Actually, yes, not actually it's not useless at all, apparently. According to science, that's actually pretty useful.
Yeah, like look at that one back there. All my plants and I have very healthy relationships. It's like so I can talk to them and just have good vibes with them.
Yeah, and that's why it's so big and healthy looking. For a second I was like, is that fake?
No,
I wonder like
very happy tree.
and a quick would you rather game with 3 questions. Would you rather speak every thought or never speak again?
Speak every thought. Because I like the thoughts, I think. I enjoy them so much. And I just don't know if I've done enough spiritual development to be able to be silent for the rest of my life. And I love what I do get to do and share.
That's what I imagined you would say, and I would really hope you would say that because otherwise the world would miss out on a lot of greatness. So I'm glad. Would you rather have the ability to come up with innovative, industry disrupting ideas once a year or consistently produce incremental improvements that keep your business solid?
Bullshit. No.
Just go all in.
I'd rather innovate.
Yes. Go. Oh, you're all in type of person, huh? Thank you so much, my dear. I had such a great time, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, so much love for you and your audience. Thank you to all the wonderful people, to Jake, Adriana, Anonymous, and everybody who asked questions. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.